Good Wednesday, everyone, and thank you for listening to episode 28 of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty. I think many of you out there will agree with me when I say the number one issue that put Donald Trump over the top of all of his Republican competitors in the 2016 primary was immigration. Very early in his campaign, Trump talked about the need to fix our immigration system and to crack down on illegal immigration. Now, I'll be the first to say I did not support Trump's policy on DACA. It would have tripled the number of people being granted amnesty than what Obama had proposed several years ago. If you were outraged over Obama's idea, then it only makes sense to be outraged over Trump's idea. But his other ideas with DACA were good: ending chain migration, ending the lottery visa system, and having an immigration system based on merit and based on skills. Of course, this took a back seat after the Florida school shooting last month, and we'll get into the latest with the school shooting later on in the podcast. On Wednesday, Attorney General Jeff Sessions gave a speech in Sacramento, California at the California Peace Officers Association. The Justice Department is now suing California for being a sanctuary state and having sanctuary cities, and interfering with the federal government's efforts to enforce immigration laws and for having an open borders policy. I'll post a link to a video where you can watch the full statement given by the Attorney General. In this speech, he said there is no nullification, that is, California or any other state cannot nullify federal law. There is no secession. There have been talks within California about possibly leaving the United States. The Attorney General said those matters have been resolved. Just go to Gettysburg or look at the tombstones of Abraham Lincoln or John C. Calhoun. Indeed, the Civil War was fought and decided the outcome of keeping the Union together over the issue of slavery. The one and only time actual secession happened, it failed at the cost of over 600,000 lives. Now, the Attorney General is correct when he says the federal government has the sole authority when it comes to enforcing immigration laws passed by Congress. ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal agents are trying to enforce the laws already on the books and are being impeded by officials in California. You may recall in 2012, there was a Supreme Court case involving Arizona in which the federal government sued Arizona for allowing law enforcement in that state to enforce federal immigration laws when the federal government failed to do so. And the Supreme Court told Arizona it cannot do that. The majority opinion, written by Anthony Kennedy, mentioned the enumerated power of Congress to establish a uniform rule of naturalization. Coming into the country illegally does not fit the uniform rules of naturalization passed by Congress. There is a legal way to immigrate to America. Kennedy also cited the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, whereby federal law will prevail over state law on matters of things that are the duties of the federal government. The Constitution provides that the executive branch, i.e. the president, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. So it's the president's job to execute the immigration laws passed by Congress. Liberals applauded the decision by the Supreme Court in 2012. Arizona could not enforce immigration laws or even enforce complementary legislation when the federal government fails to enforce immigration laws. In other words, the states cannot do a damn thing. But now we have a president who will enforce immigration laws. And California doesn't like that. That's because California is run almost exclusively with radical leftists. And to ensure that it has more voters willing to elect those who will perpetuate a liberal agenda, California has no intention of getting rid of criminal illegal immigrants. California made itself a sanctuary state. The state legislature passed laws, some of which were noted by Jeff Sessions, intended to frustrate the ability for federal immigration officers from enforcing immigration laws in California. Some of these laws include forbiddance of employers to willfully allow immigration officers to come to places of employment. Employers must give a notice to employees when immigration officials are going to conduct inspections of businesses. The straw that broke the camel's back was the recent actions by the mayor of Oakland, California. The mayor sent out an alert to the city notifying residents that ICE was coming to conduct a raid. Director of ICE Thomas Homan indicated that 800 criminal illegal immigrants were not arrested as a result of the mayor's alert. As pointed out by the Attorney General, giving a notice like this puts the lives of immigration officers at risk when they are trying to apprehend someone. And certainly the lives of law-abiding citizens are at risk because those with criminal histories are still roaming free in that city. Or they may have moved on, who knows? Governor Jerry Brown said that California has the right as a state to decide matters of immigration within its state as provided by the 10th Amendment. Now, the 10th Amendment applies when a power has not been granted to the federal government. But the Constitution is clear, and the Supreme Court has ruled in the Arizona case that immigration laws and the power to enforce those laws reside solely with the federal government. The argument is absolutely absurd. California is nullifying federal law, and now the state is being sued. There are even some calling for the Justice Department to prosecute the Oakland mayor for obstruction of justice. In a way, successful prosecutions of mayors of sanctuary cities will lead to a decline in sanctuary cities. And of course, if illegal immigrants can't find safe harbors, they are much less likely to enter the country illegally. So I applaud Jeff Sessions. He certainly is taking a very active role in cracking down on illegal immigration. I want to remind everybody to please check out the Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Southern Conservative. That's facebook.com/Southern Conservative. There you will find links to conservative news articles on stories you may not hear about in the mainstream media. Plus, if you follow the news feed, you will find links to the daily podcast. Be sure to also subscribe to this YouTube channel. You will be notified each time a new podcast has been posted. New podcasts are posted daily, Monday through Thursday. We have more news about the Florida school shooting that took place last month. The FBI has admitted that staffers were aware that the two separate warnings it received about Nikolas Cruz, the school shooter, were related but still closed the case. The tips were received in September 2017 and January 2018. The 2017 tip concerned Cruz posting a comment to a YouTube video about wanting to be a professional school shooter. The call taker of the 2018 tip did not ask standard investigative probing questions. The call taker was able to make the connection to the tip received in 2017, but the matter was not further pursued. Congressman Bob Goodlatte and Trey Gowdy said the FBI did not share information with state and local authorities in Florida despite multiple opportunities to do so. Clearly, the FBI dropped the ball in this case. Meanwhile, the Florida legislature has sent legislation to Governor Rick Scott on how to make schools safer. The legislation would enable limited school personnel to be armed while also raising the age to purchase a gun in Florida to 21. This is bipartisan legislation. However, some Republicans voted against the legislation because of raising the minimum age to purchase a firearm. One such Republican was Florida House member Jay Fant, who said, quote, "I just can't imagine that Parkland, Florida shooter can commit such a heinous crime, and then as a result we tell potentially a 20-year-old single mother living alone that she cannot purchase a firearm to defend herself." So what this lawmaker is saying is that because you have someone who has no regard for the law, they enter a school and kill 17 people, you are going to punish law-abiding citizens by taking away their Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And that's what this bill does. And I do not like that. I think it's unconstitutional. If we consider someone who is 18 to be an adult, we expect them to pay taxes, have the ability to join the military, and we force boys that when they turn 18, they have to register with the Selective Service, they should have the ability to purchase a gun. How can you tell a law-abiding citizen who is 18, 19, or 20, living on their own, maybe away at college, living off campus by themselves, Or maybe these people are married and have a family. They can't protect themselves and protect their property with a firearm? How un-American is that? How unconstitutional is that? Now, the governor said he will take his time to review this bill. If the bill is signed, I hope there will be a challenge to the age restriction. As far as arming school personnel, and again, there are limits in this legislation as to who can be armed, I think it's a great idea. As I've said before, you need armed personnel on site to be able to neutralize a shooter once a shooting begins. But you also need to have proper security measures at schools to make sure those wanting to do harm are not able to take a weapon into school buildings. Metal detectors, checking IDs, checking backpacks are possible solutions to prevent those who wish to do harm from being able to enter a school. This is what we have in airports, arenas, stadiums, and other government buildings. The same should apply to schools. As I've mentioned before, I fear for those schools or districts that publicly announce they do not want armed personnel at their schools. They are basically broadcasting to the world that their school is a gun-free zone. So if you have someone who is hell-bent on committing a mass shooting, where do you think they're going to go? You think they will go to a school where they know someone can fire bullets right back at them? Or will they target a school where they know it will take a while before law enforcement shows up? Remember, there is evil in this world, and the next school shooter is already out there. We need to be proactive in making sure schools are safe, and we can do this without infringing Second Amendment rights. Finally, I want to have more of a discussion on tariffs. Gary Cohn, Trump's economic advisor, announced his resignation over Trump's unwillingness to budge on steel and aluminum tariffs. Now, there are some out there who have been very critical of Gary Cohn for his announcement because they say Cohn knew going into the job that Trump was going to implement certain tariffs. This was something Trump talked about on the campaign trail, and it's something that I've disagreed with ever since he started talking about them. But Cohn was very instrumental in Trump's plan to lower corporate tax rates, and some have suggested that his mission has been accomplished. Cohn was a big Goldman Sachs guy, and indeed, Goldman Sachs had much to gain from lower corporate taxes. And while the individual side of Trump's tax plan could have been better by not placing more limits on deductions, the corporate side of the tax plan is excellent, and it certainly makes American businesses more competitive in a global market. Plus, the lower taxes have enabled companies to give out bonuses, pay increases, and increase matches in 401k programs. Further, businesses have more money at their discretion to invest back into their business, to grow and expand, and to hire more workers. So the lower corporate taxes is a good thing. Then we have tariffs. Now, the reason I'm against tariffs, and the reason many others are against tariffs, is because a tariff benefits a small sector of the economy at the expense of everyone. Placing a 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on imported aluminum will ultimately make the global price of steel and aluminum more expensive. Think about it. If you place what is essentially a tax on foreign steel and aluminum in an effort to make domestic steel and aluminum a more attractive and cheaper option, the domestic producers don't want to be undercut too much. They too will raise their prices so they are just marginally cheaper than their foreign competitors. But as such, the price still goes up. So if you're a business who makes goods out of steel and aluminum, the cost of the raw materials goes up, and therefore the price of your goods will in turn go up. Industries that would be impacted include the automobile industry, which relies heavily on steel and aluminum. The price of automobiles will increase as a result. And if you're someone who is debating whether to purchase a new car, you'll be less inclined to do so with a higher sticker price. This hurts the automobile industries because less cars will be sold. The beer industry, which relies heavily on aluminum for cans, will have to raise the price of beer, so the cost of drinking beer will go up. Now, all of this is in an effort to punish China for the trade deficit we have with that country. China is doing all sorts of things to benefit itself in a global market, including manipulating its currency and stealing American intellectual property. But look at the steel industry. 70% of steel used in this country is produced in the United States. That means only 30% relies on the foreign market. Now that's still a substantial number, and certainly some companies are looking to cut costs by buying steel at a lower cost. But the majority of steel in this country is produced right here at home. Do you know how much foreign steel is imported from China? Just 2%. So Trump could potentially upset not just the steel and aluminum industries, but many other industries as well by implementing these tariffs. The president has indicated he is willing to go on a country-by-country basis for implementing these tariffs. But remember that any tariff is essentially a tax added to a product that makes a product more expensive than what it otherwise would have to be. I'm sure we'll have more discussions on tariffs as the president's plans are finalized. That will do it for today's podcast. Be sure to come back Thursday for another podcast. Have a great day, everybody.